In this video, we're going to be talking about the serve the tray swing drill or swing cue. It's a very useful swing drill or cue to help keep this elbow kind of attached to the body, and it helps teach us where should this arm be at the top of the backswing. So if we think about serving a tray, this elbow is kept relatively close. The shoulder is in 90 degrees at least of external rotation, and the palm is towards the sky. Now, this is a drill to help keep us out of positions where this elbow starts to get up and around on us. So one cue that we like to use or think about is serving the tray, but what do you need physically to serve the tray? And how might your physical restrictions or mobility losses or stability motor control issues be the things that are making you get into these positions in the first place? Now, the serve the tray drill is going to try to teach you how to get out of those positions, but if there's a physical restriction, say an external rotation restriction, that is keeping you from getting here and pulling you back out of that external rotation, then simply just drilling this position won't be effective to translate this drill into the golf swing, into performance at a consistent level. Instead, it's probably going to require that we just compensate from somewhere else to achieve now this position, or make it look like we're achieving that position, but we've now created a problem somewhere else. So what I want to do here is go through some assessments of the body to see if you are capable of doing this serve the tray drill, to see where some restrictions or motor control issues might be. And then I'm going to give you some movements and drills and exercises to help improve any issues that you might have found, so that we can use this serve the tray cue or drill effectively and not create more problems than we had in the first place. Okay. So what is serve the tray swing drill? How can we assess if we have physical limitations that are making that drill difficult for us? And then what can we do to improve the body physically to take full advantage of the swing of the serve the tray swing drill? So for the serve the tray swing drill, what do we need? Well, first we need shoulder external rotation. We need to be able to get here, and hopefully, especially on our trail side arm, we can get a little bit beyond 90 degrees of external rotation at the shoulder. Okay. We also need the ability to keep this elbow tucked, so shoulder adduction or adduction, we call it here. And then we need wrist extension. So these are all things we can specifically look at the shoulder and wrist, but we can also, again, using TPI's testing, kind of look for those things as well. So TPI has its own version of kind of looking at shoulder and scap stability, motor control, and mobility. But we can also take these right on the table to look at it. So these are the things that we need from this drill: shoulder external rotation, maintaining external rotation through adduction, and then wrist extension through here. Let's take a look at a few tests to break this down in a few different ways to really get an idea of, do we have everything that's needed to do this drill? Do we have the scapular stability motor control? Do we have the rib cage expansion to create these positions? Do we have the mobility at the shoulder joint itself and the shoulder capsule? And then we can even look at wrist extension. Okay, so there's a few ways to look at shoulder external rotation. I think it's important to look through active external rotation as well as passive shoulder external rotation. So for passive, we can use a table like this. You can have a friend help you take a video to see where you're ending up. But otherwise, now I'm doing this on my lead side arm. It's important to have shoulder external rotation on your lead side arm, but especially important to test this trail side arm. But for the purpose of the video, we're just going to look at my left side here. What we want to do is let this shoulder drop down towards the ground. Elbow is at shoulder height, so we're at 90 degrees at the shoulder. Keep it there as you let that hand drop down. Hopefully it gets to the floor, and then hopefully a little bit beyond the floor as well, right there. So we're beyond 90 degrees of shoulder external rotation. That's great. Now we want to stop the test if we ever feel like this shoulder starts to hike up and off the table, or even if you feel that shoulder blade starts to kind of tuck down and underneath to help you get there, right? So we want to see what is the shoulder specifically capable of before compensation starts to kick in. Okay, do that on both sides. That's passive shoulder external rotation. Beyond that, we want to know actively, are you able to get to 90 degrees in golf position? So we can start this just upright, not golf position, But now, active range of motion, I'll do the same shoulder. Can I get it there? And then hopefully, can I get it a little bit beyond without this elbow trying to jump forward, up, down, whatever it might be. The last way we'll look at it is in golf position. So now the shoulders and the scap are going to be in a golf position. From here, hands parallel to the ground. Now, again, can we get to 90 degrees, which would be matching spine angle, now that the angle has changed. So here would be 90 degrees because it matches my spine angle. And then hopefully I can actively get it a little bit further beyond spine angle. That would be adequate range of motion, especially on this trail side arm. We want to make sure that in golf position, we can actively get to spine angle and beyond. Really important on this trail side shoulder. So there's a few ways to look at the shoulder to see if you have enough shoulder external rotation. Now, it's important to look at the passive version as well as this active and golf position version, because the golf version also tests scapular stability. Now that we're here, the scaps are going to be a position where we're going to be calling on them to get into a position to allow for shoulder external rotation. If your shoulders are too protracted, it's going to be impossible to get that shoulder beyond 90 degrees. You can do that here, reach your shoulders forward, get them out through here, and try to get to 90 degrees or beyond. You just run out of space when your shoulder blades are truly pressed out forward. So now we're testing for the ability for you to set your scaps or your shoulder blades into a stable position and then being able to rotate in that position. So there's a bit of a scapular stability component to it. If you do okay on the table, but you struggle in that golf position, it starts to tell us that it's maybe more of a scapular stability issue. I want to give you a few more tests to look at scapular stability. We'll do that in a second. Real quick, let's look at wrist extension. So if we're paying attention to wrist extension here, like we're holding a club, so or we'll make a fist. So I want to see, can we go knuckles up towards the ceiling? We're looking at this angle here, and we're essentially hoping that this thing gets to about 80 degrees of extension. It doesn't necessarily need to be a right angle, but if we're pretty dang close, then we definitely have enough wrist extension. If we're coming in well short of that here, we know that getting the top of the backswing and setting that club in the position that it should be in, or if we're just looking at the club, it's not going to look like it's in a good position. And we might blame the shoulder or something else, but in reality, it's going to be the wrist that is not letting that club get in the position that it needs to. Everything else might be perfect, but we're not setting that club where it needs to be in the top of the backswing, maybe because of a wrist problem, right? Potentially. So it's just important to rule out that there's any wrist issues, and then we can let the serve the tray drill do its job when we try to look and search for those different positions there. Now, let's look at a couple of movements to assess for scapular stability. We've already looked at one, which is the TPI golf position shoulder 90-90 test, if that's a struggle. And then we'll do a second version here on the table. Okay, so another way that we'll assess for scapular stability is this quadruped rock test. Now, this is a difficult position to self-assess from. So if you have a friend or a family member, their job is to feel the shoulder blades and see what they're doing as you move through this position. What we don't want is to feel a big gap opening up through the inside edge, kind of the spinal edge of the shoulder blade as you work in a different position. So we don't want this shoulder blade to feel like it's coming in, poking out towards them. The position here, we're on hands and knees. From here, we'll go up onto our toes, lift our knees just barely off the ground, and then we're just going to rock forward as far as we can, and then we'll sink and rock backwards through here like this. Come back up, nice and slow, rock forward, 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 as far as it'll let you, and then we can come on back. Now, slowly and steadily, we'll work through kind of our end range positions there. And again, your friend or helper is seeing if the inside edge of the scap start to kind of poke up out towards them. And if it's significant, then we definitely know we have a scapular stability problem as we move into shoulder flexion. Another way to kind of feel this and assess for a lot of different things at once, including a little bit of scapular stability, is this test here. We're facing away, and all we're trying to do is touch the top of the opposite shoulder blade. If we feel like this scap, again, starts to poke out towards them, then we know we have a problem with that. Now, this tests for external rotation, as well as flexion of this elbow, and a little bit of abduction. This test here will assess for that adduction that we talked about earlier, and internal rotation, but we're also curious about shoulder stability. So again, does this gap start to poke out towards your friend? If we're starting to notice that in a few different tests, well, then we know we definitely have a scapular stability motor control issue that's worth working on. that's going to make the serve the tray drill difficult for us, and it could be the source of why this is a problem for you in the drill, but also why your golf swing is maybe showing the same swing characteristics that you've been working on for a while. It could be a physical problem. Okay, now if you felt that shoulder mobility, scapular stability, motor control, wrist mobility, if any of these things were a problem for you, I have 2 circuits for you that I want you to try that'll work through all of these components. We have some rib cage expansion and trying to create some expansion of the muscles that attach around the shoulder blade and the shoulder and allow for expansion and movement in the rib cage, all these things that are really subtly important for shoulder function. Also, we have some just pure shoulder external rotation, strength and stability movements. And then we have some scapular movements that, again, we're going to try to lock down that scapula or get it to function correctly as a stabilizer for the shoulder to move on. 2 different circuits for that. When we're working through movements that are a little bit more involved, try to focus mostly on the cues around the shoulder. There's going to be a few where we can get some hip and shoulder, and try to focus mostly on what the shoulder's up to and what that scapula is up to. Okay, this is our short seated breathing drill. The idea behind this drill, the purpose is to get expansion into this upper back and even into the upper back and neck. So we're trying to get the muscles on the upper back to start to relax and lengthen and be in more of an eccentric state than a compressed concentric state. Okay, so with this positioning, we're gonna be reaching low, so kind of on an angle down low. I want you to extend your arms in that direction and then give me like a little reach plus. So reach and then give me just a ½ inch more. This puts those muscles in that just last little extra bit of length position where the scaps are just a little bit protracted. We never want max effort through here because then we get the traps, upper traps kicking on a bunch of other muscles. All we want is a reach and a little plus. Now we're perfect. We're gonna keep palms up towards the ceiling. It's a long inhale through the nose. Be longer than you want, right? Long, long, long. And then a very long exhale through your mouth like you're fogging a mirror. I want you to keep pushing, pushing, pushing. Longer exhale, 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 but let it take its time. Don't do it all at once. You want to be slow. And what you should feel is some of these muscles around the core and obliques really start to kick on to try to help push the next little bit of air out, out, out. Okay, so let it take its time. And you feel this core really turn on and it start to pull you down and in. That's what we want. Then I want you to hold that tension in there. So once you fully exhale, hold the tension, and then breathe back in through your nose nice and slow. The idea here is we don't want you to, as you exhale again, lose height through here. So as you exhale and this starts getting tucked down, I don't want you crunching down with it. Let it pull this down, but your head and your eyes stay exactly where they were. So we almost get longer through the spine as that happens. Hold that down there and a nice big long inhale again through the nose. So we're just playing that game back and forth with these slow breath cycles. When it comes to sitting, have your back up against a wall. We don't want to be perfectly upright. We want a little rounded in that upper back. We don't need this low back to be flat to the wall either. So we have a little bit of space here. Then here on the lowish mid back, we start to reach the wall, and then we come up off that wall again. So we're in this slightly rounded position. The reach gives us a little bit more. And then as we breathe and exhale, we're just not letting ourselves get more rounded. We maintain that position. Okay, go ahead, give this a shot. Okay, this is our DNS 5-month upper body roll. The position here, we're laying on our side. We can use a couple of different positions for the lower half. We can be at 45 degrees of hip flexion. We can be all the way up here at 90, maybe somewhere in between, doesn't matter too much. The key position is we don't want the shoulder out in front of us. Try to kind of draw it back underneath your shoulder. This shoulder should be stacked right on top to start. First thing I want you to think about is getting as wide as you can between the shoulders. So try to get this kind of broad, wide chest. You should notice as you do this that we get a little hole that opens up right through here. So a little bit of daylight here. So long as we have this daylight here and we're staying kind of wide, then we're in the right position. We can work into a little bit of deep neck flexion here as we do this, a little bit of retraction. We're trying to keep and maintain this position throughout the movement. What we're going to do, keeping this width, is roll over this bottom side arm and shoulder. Roll, roll, roll. Let the chest come around, around, around. Hold here, kind of at your end range rotation, keeping this width. Push, push, push. Build the pressure cooker, I like to say. and then use that tension slowly. Now we're going to open back up. So what we're doing here is as we start, is I'm pushing this elbow down. It's essentially looking like this, and then I'm continuing to try to do it, but the ground is in the way. This should create some tension in the shoulder, right? The shoulder capsule, the rotator cuff muscles. Keep that tension. Let this shoulder stay as wide as you can as it rolls. Think about scraping the wall over there. Reaching for the wall as you roll, keeping that width. I'm continuously pushing down here to control my weight as I roll forward, going as far as I can. I can rotate the head with it. Hold here for 5 seconds, push hard, but don't let it start to unroll. Just push, push, push. And then use that tension and that connection you've built to the shoulder to open back up. You get a lot of activity here around the whole shoulder joint. And you go just about where shoulders are stacked, a little bit beyond, and then start to roll back forward again, nice and slow. Okay, so that is the DNS 5-month upper body roll. Give it a shot. Okay, this is the FRC shoulder external rotation pails and rails. So for this exercise, you need a floor and something to bolster our hands up onto. What we're going to do is lay flat on the floor. You're going to start with your hands elevated close to as much what we call external rotation as you can. So my elbows here are at 90 degrees. My shoulder is at 90 degrees. This is our starting position. I have my hands about as high as I can get them. This should be good right here. If I had less range of motion, I'd have to start somewhere like here. Or if I had a ton more, I could even start way up here. But this is most comfortable for me. So I'm going to start right here. Here, the exercise is going to be 60 seconds. With your head relaxed here onto the ground, you should be pushing down into here these blocks. We're going to ramp up that pressure over 60 to 90 seconds from a 2 out of 10 to the very end. It's going to be a max effort push down into these blocks. After that, we're going to work on doing some lift-offs. So after that 60 or 90 seconds, I'm just going to raise my hands slightly, hold for a second, then let them back down. Do the same thing. A second lift off, getting as much external rotation as we can, and then let come back down. So here we're working on strengthening our shoulders' ability to do external rotation and internal rotation at an end range. In this case, our kind of close to our end range external rotation. We're working on strengthening, getting the body used to being in that position, letting the brain learn what it feels like to contract muscles and control this range of motion. Okay? So we do about 5 liftoffs, and then we can repeat for sets and reps like that. Go ahead, give it a shot. All right, that was circuit number 1. Give circuit number 2 coming up next here a try. Okay, for this banded shoulder mobilization, we need a relatively thick band anchored low to the ground. You're going to be laying next to that. This band, you want to get as close and kind of deep into this armpit, deep into that shoulder joint as you can. And then you move until you got some good, more than you think or more than you would like tension in that band. So we want lots of tension. From here, we reach this up. This band is pulling my shoulder kind of out and away. Now we just move through some shoulder range of motion as we do this. So what I want you to do is let that band pull. We can do active, but even better than this would be kind of let this arm relax, and then you help guide it into this range of motion here. So there we get less muscle activity around that shoulder joint so that this band can actually mob and move the shoulder into different parts of the shoulder capsule. So one motion we'll do is slowly reaching up overhead as this pulls and tractions the shoulder. Another move is we'll kind of passively pull this thing across. This is the one that works best for me here to really open up and slide that shoulder in the shoulder joint. Okay, so these are the 2 that we're going to kind of alternate through. Go do 8 to 10 slow reps like this, playing around with how much tension you put in the band and how much active versus passive range of motion you work into. And then same thing here, 8 to 10 slow reps, playing around with how far you pull that hand across. So it's a great start to start opening up and mobilizing the shoulder joint. Give it a shot. So this is the downward dog for shoulder internal rotation and stability. So we're essentially doing a downward dog position, but we're going to change up a couple of things, or at least we're going to add some emphasis in a few key areas. One position or change that we're going to do with this downward dog is our starting position is just going to be our knees being raised off the ground 2 inches. So think just here like this. We're going to push down through our hands, and we're going to raise our knees off the ground 2 inches, and we're up on our toes. From here, this is what the movement looks like. We're going to start with our knees just a couple inches off the ground. I'm going to push through my hands, push, 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 until I finish at the top with my biceps just about touching my ears. Okay, now a few key things with this exercise is that we want to maintain or push down through the inside edge of our hands as we do this. Okay, that is very important. That's going to make sure that we don't come up onto the outside part of our hand, and instead of creating this great relative motion that needs to happen at the shoulder as we go through shoulder flexion like this, is that we're just going to kind of orient our arms through that position. We're going to kind of lock everything down. We're going to use the whole shoulder complex as one big chunk to move into that position. If we keep our inside edge of our hands down no matter what and keep some pressure through there, then instead we're going to get this nice internal rotation motion happening at that shoulder, where these different components of the shoulder complex are going to move on top of each other relative to each other. So inside edge of my hands, push down, I maintain that pressure, and then I push, push, push until I get to the top of the position, and I'm going to slowly come back down. My knees stay at a 90-degree angle the whole time. And again, we can just do that for reps nice and slow. I don't want you to think about just kicking your hips back like that, but instead, every bit of motion has to come from you pushing your body away from you through your hands. Otherwise, what we'll do is just shift our weight backwards, and it kind of takes some of that pressure, that load off the shoulders. Okay, so that's something we can do. From there, we can progress to, say, single arm version of this, where we might limit the range of motion that we work through, but otherwise the idea is the same. We want to keep that inside edge of the hand pressing down through the mat the whole time. Give it a shot. Okay, for our DNS low oblique sit, what we need to do is laying on the side. First things first, this is what the position is going to look like. We're going to extend up, separate our knees, and then we're rolling over our bottom side knee and hip. So to do that well, what we want to do first is create some pressure into the shoulder by pushing this elbow down and away. We want to make sure we are stacked over top of our shoulder and elbow. We don't want this shoulder ending up in our ear like this, or even up through this middle area here. What we really want is this down and tucked away, being strong through this bottom side shoulder. After that, intra-abdominal pressure, so we're breathing in through our nose, trying to pull that diaphragm down to fill up space and expand in 360 degrees around the belt line. From there, we got a good intra-abdominal pressure. We're going to extend both hips up, separate our knees, and we're rolling over this bottom side hip. But what's not happening is I'm not letting my foot come off the ground there. So as I work through here, I don't let that foot pop off the ground like this, because that's going to be us just rolling as one big unit, as opposed to getting what we need, which is an internal rotation happening through this bottom side hip. So again, we're coming up, nice intra-abdominal pressure, separate the knees, pushing my knee and my foot down into the ground, and then rolling back out of that. I want you to think of that as a roll over that foot, and then we're pushing this foot down, this knee down into the ground to control that roll, and then we push even harder down into that knee to roll back out of it. So you should feel that bottom side hip working pretty hard to do that, to control that roll down, and then to slowly push yourself back out of that roll. We're using those muscles to pull that hip into the center of the hip socket, and then control motion of internal and external rotation around that hip and pelvis. Give it a shot. Okay, these are circuits that are addressing everything that you need for the serve the tray golf drill, which means this is everything you need for the thorax, shoulder, scapula, elbow, and wrist to help improve your physical capability or capacity to get into an effective, reproducible, and power-producing top of the backswing position. Now, with that last move, make sure to pay attention to what that shoulder is doing and let yourself really brace and push through the shoulder. You're trying to get as much length through here as possible, which lets that scap Again, now do the job of creating the motion of that thorax on top of a stable shoulder. So it's a little bit different, and that hip's going to be working awfully hard. Try to focus on what that shoulder blade's up to. Okay. This was serve the tray swing drill. You notice how important, especially from that video, how retraction of that shoulder blade frees up so much extra space and all these different things. To keep this drill from becoming an issue for you and just a compensator creator, trying to get into these positions, make sure that you physically are able to get in the positions that you need to get the most from that drill. So don't let this drill pull you back, and get the most that you can out of it by doing these circuits here, going through them, doing the assessments, and see what you're made out of. Okay. Thanks for watching. Subscribe, like, share if you want, and let me know something else that you want to learn about when it comes to the golf swing and the body. Thanks.